All right, guys, what's going on? Welcome back to the Everything College Football podcast. Today, me and Nick here will be doing our complete preview and prediction for Week 6, diving into the complete slate, offering our predictions. Looking at the Friday night slate, a couple of conference games to get us kicked off. Kansas State, Oklahoma State. I think that line's around 12, 13, 14 points, depending on the book you get. The Cowboys, they've not looked great this year under Mike Gundy, which I kind of figured, this would probably be a real down season for Oklahoma State. But Gundy, respect what he's been able to do during his tenure at this school. So I definitely think bowl eligibility was on the table before the last 2 weeks. They lost to Iowa State, who got embarrassed the week prior. They give up 34 points there. Really looked sharp, though, in terms of run defense after, being bad against South Alabama, giving up almost 250 on the ground. Absolutely getting blown out in that game at home to the Jaguars. Now they host a Kansas State team that has looked pretty good. Of course, they lost to Missouri. They beat UCF pretty handily, though their last time out. Will Howard, he's been really flinging it around, 8 touchdowns, over 1,000 yards. Does have 4 interceptions, though. The run game, though, this has been a very complimentary attack. DJ Giddens has really emerged as the lead star for them in the backfield. Treshaun Ward, I expected more out of him this year. Thought he'd be a good replacement for Deuce Vaughn in terms of speed and getting to the edge. Only 160 yards on the score from him, so really hasn't been much of a factor here. And I'm going to pick Oklahoma State to cover this game just because, on a Friday night here in Stillwater, I think this is a good opportunity for Oklahoma State to come out, play good ball when no one's going to expect them to do so. I don't really even know who the quarterback is. I've had 3 different guys under center this year, Nick, and they've just not looked good. Since Mason Rudolph, the quarterback position's really just been a struggle for this football team. Jaden Bray, Dejon Stribling, Brendan Presley. They do have some weapons here, and I think they're going to get involved similar to the way Luther Bird and a couple of those guys did against Missouri, where they're able to have success in open space through the passing attack, Nick.
I like Kansas State here. I think Kansas State's going to win this game. They're going to cover the spread. Right now I'm looking at 12.5. I think I got them at a 15-point win. I think Will Howard's a good quarterback, good solid Big 12 quarterback. Like you said, over 1,000 yards passing, 8 touchdowns. The 4 interceptions are obviously an issue so far. I just look at Oklahoma State. They've really struggled on offense, and they've allowed more total yards per game than they have total yards per game. So they're in the negative in yards, which is never a good sign when you're a Big 12 program or a program for that at any matter for that. They have 343 yards of total offense so far this season per game, and they have 371 yards allowed. They got dominated by South Alabama at home, an embarrassing result, and lost to the worst team in the conference, in my opinion, in Iowa State. On the road when they last played, they're towards the bottom of the conference. Really, the only teams below them are the newcomers, who have all struggled, such as UCF, who had a completely disaster game against Baylor and lost to Kansas State the week before. I like Kansas State Wildcats here. I think Howard has got good balance at quarterback. I think Giddens is a great running back. Ward has not really been involved, but he's still a talented back. Giddens, hit for his part 423 yards on the ground and 4 scores. I like the Wildcats here, but certainly a nice matchup on Friday night to kind of kick us off at 7:30. A very interesting matchup between 2 Big 12 teams that seem to be heading in the wrong direction.
Yeah, compelling argument. I'm going to stick with the Cowboys in that one. Big line for the home team. Looking in Big 10 country, Illinois against Nebraska. I'm really just tired of betting on this Illinois football team. They've just been very disappointing. Brett Bielema has just not did a good job. Thought this offensive line would be much more physical than only putting up about $150 per game on the ground. Luke Altmaier's been terrible. 7 picks to 5 touchdowns. Not a very good decision maker. He's awful under pressure. Nebraska, they've been really good against the run this year. They also didn't really play tough opponents. Colorado, the Minnesota game, I think certainly a little impressive, though, defending the run. The first 4 games of the year, under 60 yards rushing for all those opponents. Michigan explodes, though, for 250 and 3 touchdowns this past week. They're not playing Michigan by any means. They're also pretty banged up at quarterback. Hendon Harbaugh, I think, will be getting the start, or Harburg, that is. Jeff Sims, as well, has been a turnover machine. 54% completion rate combined as a team. They've just not really been able to execute on offense like we figured they would. Disappointing effort from them. I think the biggest X factor here, though, is this defensive line is really starting to come into his own for Nebraska, led by Jerzon Newton. Wasn't the prettiest performance against Purdue, but the offense really it was so ugly that the home team and the Boilermakers really able to take advantage of some bad plays. But I think this defensive line is going to overpower a very poor Nebraska O-line. I think this is certainly still an important part of this football team. Keith Randolph, All-American to Newton, guys like Tariq Barnes, Dylan Rozek at linebacker. I think they're going to be able to collapse this running game, make it hard for whoever the quarterback is. They've not really been able to generate explosive plays. So I'm going to stick with Illinois to cover here, Nick, but I'm just really tired of betting on this team, and they're probably going to burn me again.
2 bad teams here who are really disappointing so far. 2 and 3 teams that have really not lived up to expectations, especially Illinois. They've been very disappointing. It's going to be a chilly night in Illinois, in Champaign, Illinois. Rainy weather on this Friday night. Nebraska, they've looked terrible on the offensive line. Harbig is going to come over and take over at quarterback. This team is averaging 139 yards per game through the air, just a terrible, terrible number through the air. They really just cannot get the ball moving at all through the air. Sims has been a turnover machine, like you said. The rush allowed defense is fantastic, right? 86 yards per game allowed on the ground is a fantastic number from Nebraska. Like you said, though, Newton has stepped up. He's been that big physical presence in the interior that we thought he would be. He's dominating. I'm going to take Illinois plus the points in, a sloppy game. I'm thinking like 20-13, something like that. The under is certainly in play here in this rainy game. A lot of running going to go on here, I think, and a lot of ground and pound and just trying to break down that Nebraska run defense that's really solid. This is a very weird game on this Friday night. The weather's going to be poor. Both teams are poor. Should be an interesting matchup to watch.
Now moving to the early slate on Saturday. Game of the day, Oklahoma, Texas. A lot on the line here at Red River. As always, Texas 6.5-point favorites. Oklahoma, Dylan Gabriel in his passing attack, 75% completion rate, almost 1,600 yards, 15 touchdowns. Some guys like Andrel Anthony, Nick Anderson, they've really stepped up to help out Jaleel Farouk here. So this passing attack has certainly been a little bit more explosive than expected, but the running game has been flat out disappointing. Only one run of 20-plus yards through 5 games. That's 128 in FBS. They now turn around and play in a very impressive D-line, one of the best in the country, led by Byron Murphy, Devondre Sweat, Ethan Burke. This is going to be an interesting game. I'm definitely going to pick Oklahoma to cover, though, because it seems like the offenses live up to the expectation in this game. They play better than they probably should. Texas, they certainly seem at times ready for a disappointment. They certainly have a struggle scoring in plus territory. That was a problem against Kansas where they had over 600 yards in that game. Didn't look great against Rice, held to under 40 in that one. This offense is a lot better than the numbers we're seeing. The 40 points is the most they've seen all year, 30 plus in each contest, especially against Alabama where Quinn Ewers showcased his maturity. And I certainly think this secondary by Oklahoma, guys like Woody Washington, Billy Bowman, they're going to be up for the challenge. They're going to look to slow down this team. They clearly look much better in the secondary, even though they've been playing weak opponents. You can clearly tell that Venables is having an impact here, though, with the coaching. Danny Stutzman's a phenomenal linebacker. They're going to look to slow down that balance at Texas, and I think they'll have some success doing it, but for the course of 4 quarters, hard to do. I'm going to pick a 40-35 type score in favor of the Longhorns. I'm going to pick the Sooners to cover, though, Nick. Favorite rivalry in college football for me personally. Can't wait for this one to go down.
I think Texas wins this game by a bit of a wider margin. I like Texas here. They've had a really great offense this year. They've kind of hit that stride. Quinn Ewers finally looks like the quarterback we thought he was going to be. He's having a fantastic season, 1,300 yards so far, over 300 yards, 10 touchdowns, 1 interception. Xavier Worthy, we're still waiting for him to break down as that sort of downfield threat. Dylan Gabriel, for his parts, look fantastic. I've been very impressed with Oklahoma. They're very good. 5-0 start for them. 54 points allowed through their first 5 games. The fewest by a Big 12 team since 2009. That is an impressive number. This defense is good, but Texas defense has looked better. They've played a better schedule so far. Traveling Tuscaloosa and knocking off Alabama is no easy feat. They beat a good Kansas team at home by over 25 points this past weekend, so certainly Texas has this good pedigree here. I like Texas to win this game. I'm going to go 35-20 with the points as well, but this should be a total toss-up back and forth, a very strong battle that has playoff implications for both these teams.
Yeah, certainly should be a great game. Like you said, I just think the lack of explosive plays on the ground for Oklahoma is really going to plague them, while Texas, they should certainly have more ideal balance. Now we look at Ohio State, Maryland on Fox. This is about 20-point line in favor of the Buckeyes, which is pretty crazy. Coming into the year, I said Maryland over 7.5 at plus money was a pretty good bet. And they're already up to 5 wins. I think that Maryland is doing a great job under Mike Locksley. Schedule this far, though, was not very impressive. Defenses look sharp, though, nonetheless. In that first half against Virginia, they really struggled, pulled away from that game late. This is a team that doesn't exactly get into the backfield a whole lot, though the pass rush isn't exactly sharp, even though they've been putting up quality numbers, I guess you could say. Big-time opportunity here, though, to knock off the Buckeyes on the road. Maryland at times, even last year, they certainly compete with this football team. But I think Ohio State showed something. They showed some nice physicality. Passing attack was getting into more sync. The ability to spark some big plays on the ground as well. Well, at least that one touchdown was the big play they had. For the rest of the game, not so much. This is just a very tough Ohio State defensive line. They're, Tyleik Williams, JT Tuimoloau, Jack Sawyer stepping up as well. They just have too many bodies up front for a Maryland O-line that's been good and sharp, but in the past, at least coming into the year, I was certainly pretty critical of them. And I just think it's going to be hard for Taulia Tagovailoa, who isn't great under pressure. He's been good this season, almost 1,500 yards, 13 touchdowns, to make big plays through the air. They certainly spread it out to a variety of different weapons. They're pretty deep at that position. Roman Hemby at running back as well. They have playmakers that can certainly, step up in games like this. But I just think, guys like Michael Hall, they're going to eat on this defensive line. Again, a big fan of Tyreek Williams as well, Tommy Eichenberg. I think they're just going to get too many stops on the defensive side of the ball, and they're starting to get this offense moving a little bit more. Marvin Harrison, he's going to get more involved. McCord, very impressive with what he was able to do at Notre Dame. I just think this is going to be too much for Ohio State here. I think they're ready for a breakout.
I think Ohio State is certainly trending in the right direction. They're finally rounding into form, but Maryland's playing very good football under Mike Locksley, the former Alabama coordinator, with Talia Tagovailoa slinging it over there. Tagovailoa, for his part, played pretty good so far this season. Nearly 1,500 yards passing, 13 touchdowns, 3 interceptions. They've blown out a lot of their opponents so far. They blew out UVA. They blew out Michigan State. They blew out Indiana. They're playing good football. I like them to cover the spread. You said it's a lofty spread, 20 points. That is a ton of points if you really think about it when you're playing with two talented teams like this. I know it's on the road, which is why I don't think Maryland's going to get close to winning, but I think they can certainly cover in that 15 to 17 point loss range. I like Maryland's offense a lot. They're averaging 454 yards per game, which is more than Ohio State currently is averaging. They're at 447. Of course, Ohio State's played better opponents, but I still think it's important to notice that this Maryland team is good. They're good against the run, 116 allowed on the ground. They're not as great against the pass, right? 211 allowed through the air, and their defense certainly has some holes, and I think Kyle McCord will be able to get the ball to his big players such as Marvin Harrison Jr. and get this job done for Ohio State in front of a raucous crowd. This is a real nice test, though, for Ohio State. They got back-to-back big tests here, beating Notre Dame on the road. Now they get a good Maryland team coming in Big Ten play. I like Maryland to make some noise, be competitive in the first half, but Ohio State's going to pull away late.
Yeah, I just think that some of the athleticism they lost last year, Deontay Banks, Jacorian Bennett, in the secondary is going to be too much to overcome here. Even though guys like Terheb Still, Bayou Braid, some of the veterans, Dante Trader, those guys are very good. I just don't think they're as athletic as what they had last season out there on the boundary, and it's certainly going to expose them. I'll take Ohio State to cover. We're going to learn a lot about both these teams here, though. LSU and Missouri, the Tiger teams are both ranked. LSU, the defense, I don't know what's going on there in Baton Rouge. While on the other hand, Missouri, they're off to a great start here, undefeated, but they've not been exactly great. They only beat, Vanderbilt by 17, Memphis by 1 score, Kansas State by 3, Middle Tennessee by 4. So they haven't exactly been flawless themselves. This offense is obviously much better, even better than I think we thought it would be, and we gave it some pretty nice praise in the preseason. Brady Cook, 75% comp rate, almost 1,500 yards, 11 touchdowns, no picks. Luther Burden, we said that this guy needed to get more involved, or he'd probably transfer out towards the end of the year. Second nationally in receptions with 43, 644 yards, 5 touchdowns. Theo Weiss has been a nice complimentary piece as well. And Mookie Cooper's also been a very solid third option here. Missouri has some nice balance as well. Cody Schrader putting up 92-plus yards a game. Nathaniel Pete has some speed as well. They like to get him involved. But they've really been throwing this ball around, Nick, and it's been successful. And LSU, on the other hand, they've been terrible on defense. 706 yards against Ole Miss after giving up 420-plus against Arkansas. They also got carved up in that second half against Florida State, really the entire game through the air. I really don't know what to pick here. I'm going to pick Missouri to cover. The line's not all that big, 6.5. Don't know if they'll win. I think I'm still going to pick LSU to win this game because Jaden Daniels has been terrific. 1,700 yards through the air, another 300 on the ground, 19 total touchdowns. These have been extreme for this football team. While the duo of Malik Neighbors and Brian Thomas has really came together, 100-plus yards per game for those two. LSU's defense is terrible, though, Nick. I don't know what we're going to get in this one. I think 60.5 is the total or something like that. We could either see the offense really falter or the offenses really step up in this game. I just got to lean towards the offense as being a great high-scoring affair with the Missouri Tigers covering.
I'm actually going to take Missouri outright. I think they're going to win this game. I think they have so much opportunity here, a big chance for Eli Drinkwitz & Co. to get a huge win at home against LSU. LSU has been very bad on defense. Their defense is just pathetic, 429.4 yards per game allowed. They lost to Ole Miss. They gave 55 points at Ole Miss. They gave 31 points in a win at home to Arkansas. Gave up 45 points in a loss to Florida State. They're in total free fall on defense. I don't really know what they're doing. They seem to be putting players in the wrong position. They really seem to be – Harold Perkins has been lined up wrong, in my opinion, all season. They just seem to be having this weird sort of scheming and just building the defense out there. It's going to be a bit of a colder day at Como. Going to be a loud, raucous crowd. This is a huge opportunity for Missouri Tigers. Cook has been fantastic for his part. No mistakes so far. Almost 1,500 yards passing, 11 touchdowns, no interceptions. Burden stepping up, hitting the heights we thought he would. 644 yards receiving, 5 touchdowns, lead the nation in catches. Malik Neighbors not that far behind him with 40 receptions, 625, and 5 touchdowns himself. But I think, Jaden Daniels is a great quarterback. I'm very impressed with him so far. 700 yards, 16 touchdowns, 2 interceptions. But Missouri, they got everything to gain and nothing to lose really here at this point. This is a huge opportunity for them to take a big gamble and, throw a punch at an SEC powerhouse. Missouri, they've been, towards the bottom of the conference since they joined the conference. It's a huge opportunity to move to 6-0 and put that there for real. They haven't really played anybody yet, but they beat a good Kansas State team at home. They beat Memphis at a neutral site. They beat Vandy this past week on the road. This is a big opportunity for Missouri to come out and show that they're for real in the SEC and they have a real opportunity to be competitive in the East.
Yeah, they have plenty of talent on their defense as well, especially in the secondary. Just this average winning margin here is kind of scaring me away. Missouri to cover, might pick them towards the end of the week to win outright, just like you. We'll see how it goes, though. 2 Tiger teams should be an interesting one. Rutgers-Wisconsin, the Badgers, I had lofty expectations for them, but I was also cautious because I knew they had a lot to try to gel together. And this offense certainly hasn't been flawless. Tanner Mordecai has more picks than touchdowns. He was able to put it together on the ground last week, though. Or in the last game against Purdue, that is. He has 4 rushing touchdowns. Ches Malusi out for the year for Graf. A very bad leg injury. It's unfortunate to see. Braylon Allen, though, 371, 6 touchdowns, averaging over 7 yards per carry. This team doesn't seem to run the ball that much, though. Or at least in terms of timing. I remember the first half against Georgia Southern, Allen only had a couple of touches before finally letting him loose in the second half where he ate up. So this ground game is certainly good whenever they commit to it. I like what they have at receiver and guys like Will Pauling, Shamari Dyke, Skylar Bell. I think this is a 14-point line at this moment in time. And I'm going to pick Rutgers to win this game. I love this not to win the game, but to cover, that is. I just love this defense. I think that, coming into the season, we're both high on this unit. Guys like Aaron Lewis, Mohamed Toure, Tyreen Powell. They have legit ball players on this side of the ball. Shiano is phenomenal at coaching defense, and the offense is showing some more confidence. Gavin Wismith, they're letting him do a little bit more. He's only completing about 54%, but he only has the 1 pick. And again, the confidence through the air has been on display. Kyle Monagai, 471, 6 touchdowns, the 195 per game so far through 5 on the ground. That's an impressive number, Nick. I've been waiting for years for them to eclipse that 150 140 yard per game mark. And wow, they finally did it. I'm so impressed by Rutgers. I think they're going to cover in this game. It's going to be hard for them to win in Madison, though, because I definitely think they're still too one-dimensional. But I'll go ahead and take a stab at the cover. Why not?
I think Rutgers is going to cover this game as well. I think they've had an impressive season so far. Outside the loss to Michigan, obviously they were always going to lose at the Big House, but they beat Virginia Tech. They beat Northwestern kick off the season. They have looked good against their other token opposition, Temple and Wagner. This team is good on the ground. The offense is looking better than we expected. Like you said, 151 yards through the air, 195 on the ground so far this season. The defense, 267 yards allowed per game, under 100 yards allowed per game on the ground, and 169 allowed through the air. Wisconsin, for their part, they haven't lived up to the expectations so far. They still have a little bit disappointing. Obviously, the loss to Washington State on the road, a very good Washington State team, so you can kind of give that a bit of a mulligan heading out there. They beat Georgia Southern, they beat Purdue, they beat Buffalo. They're rounding into form. Mordecai's looking better at quarterback, but he still has a 2 touchdowns, 3 interception ratio, which is not great. Allen, for his part, is really good on the ground, 371 and 6 touchdowns. Rutgers is going to be competitive in this game. They're going to throw a punch or two. They're going to be in a dogfight here. They're going to cover the spread. It's at 14 I'm looking at right now, so I think they'll certainly cover that. It's an exciting game for Rutgers, and there's a lot of progress with Greg Schiano and company in New Jersey. Like I said, they have the 1 loss to Michigan so far, but outside of that, they're 4-1, and they look to be, not the bottom of the conference. They could certainly make a bowl game if they get lucky and pick off a Big Tenor team too throughout the rest of the season. I'm very happy what Rutgers has done. They'll certainly be competitive in this game.
Now looking at the mid-afternoon slate of our Week 6, Washington State going on the road, 3.5-point underdogs to UCLA. People might find that crazy, but I fully understand why. They're giving up some big running plays to Oregon State. The last game they played ended up giving up 242 and 4 touchdowns. The offensive line for Wazoo isn't the greatest, even though the passing attack is phenomenal. UCLA, they match up pretty well here, though. They have a rushing attack that can hurt you with Carson Steele, TJ Harden. They've been 2 very solid backs. They weren't able to get going against UCLA, or Utah, that is. Obviously, they had, Dante Moore at quarterback. Tough place to go play Salt Lake City for a freshman quarterback. Not shocked to see him struggle one bit. But the running game here, they have an opportunity to certainly impress behind a physical O-line. And then the defensive line for UCLA, it's one of the nation's best. People don't give it credit. Gabriel Grayson Murphy, Liatu Latu coming off the edge, phenomenal getting into the backfield. Carl Jones Jr. They have some nice depth, some nice size here. This defensive line has experience as well. So I fully understand why UCLA is a favorite. I certainly still have questions about their pass defense, though. They weren't great against Coastal Carolina. They did come away with 2 picks. They ended up giving up 289 in that game. Secondary has been great since. They haven't played anybody, though, Nick. San Diego State, Utah. I mean, these aren't even really passing attacks, especially with no Cam Rising. So I certainly think this is going to be a big test for Washington State's, passing attack, because I want Cam Ward to have time. If he does, he's going to pick them apart. He's been phenomenal this year in the Heisman race, 13 touchdowns, no picks, playing the ball. I thought he'd be playing a season ago. I said coming into the year, I loved what Washington State did in the portal in terms of receiver. Everywhere else was a bit of a mess, but guys like Kyle Williams, Josh Kelly, productive receivers in the past, along with returning Lincoln Victor. I mean, this is a nice trio of pass catchers here, Nick. I like this passing attack. Things could really fall apart for the Pac-12 here if Washington State loses this game. That's why I'm going to pick them to cover. UCLA, they just lost to Utah, who just lost to Oregon State, who lost to Washington State. We talk about this conference potentially beating themselves up, Nick. Red flags are going to be arising if Wazoo loses this game.
Certainly the Pac-12 is in free fall mode, beating each other up in this last sort of season for them. They're throwing punches at each other. You just gave the whole list of who beat who so far. I'm like Wazoo to win this game as well. They're going to win it outright on the road in the Rose Bowl, though let's be honest, the Rose Bowl is not really that intimidating of an environment. UCLA fans don't really tend to show up. No offense to UCLA fans, they just not showing up. I know your stadium's not on campus. It's a tough drive. I understand, certainly can sympathize with that. Cam Ward has been fantastic, 1,300, almost 1,400 yards passing, 13 touchdowns, no mistakes. Dante Moore has not been bad, but 8 touchdowns, 2 interceptions, under 1,000 yards so far. Only 86 attempts for him. I know he's been battling injuries and some things such like that. This UCLA run defense is fantastic. 77 yards allowed on the ground per game is a good number. Washington State allows 132 on the ground, but the total offense is too good for Washington State, in my opinion, for them not to win this game. 533 total yards of offense per game so far this season, including 400 yards passing. Impressive numbers. They're able to air it out. This Washington State team is rounding into form. Very good spot. Here's a great opportunity for this team to win on the road against UCLA, get a huge road win, which they don't have so far this season. They only won on the road and played Colorado State out of conference. Washington State's in the top 15. They got to keep this momentum going if they want to have a chance to be involved in the Pac-12 title game.
Yeah, J. Michael Sturvant, he's been great for UCLA at pass catcher, coming over from Cal. Guys like Sam Lockett, Chad Smith-Wade, Jaden Hicks, they have some ball players in the secondary. So even though this isn't a perfect Washington State defense, they certainly have some good players at all levels, some nice depth outside of probably linebacker. I'll take Washington State to cover, though. Texas A&M and Alabama, we broke this game down in full. Won't spend too much time on it. A&M defensive line led by Walter Nolan. I think they're here, Nick. They finally have arrived. They've been phenomenal against the run, giving them like 42 yards on nearly 40 attempts against Arkansas. Has completely just hammered that offensive line. It's full of size. Plenty of guys like Raheem Sanders and KJ Jefferson with ability to run. And they just completely stonewalled them. On the other hand, they had the top-ranked secondary a season ago in terms of pass defense. Edgar and Cooper has been great, along with Teron York, a young player, a linebacker. So Texas A&M, they certainly have the players. They can win games like this. They've been very good against Alabama the last 2 seasons. Jimbo Fisher certainly has them figured out. This is a big test for Alabama, though. I think they've started to find a little bit more ever since that red zone pick Milroe had against Ole Miss. I think you're going to see him maybe run 20 times this game. You need to try to get him on the edge, though. Let him showcase that great burst and explosiveness as a runner. I think this passing attack, with the depth and the speed they have, guys like Isaiah Bond, Kobe Pertese, Jalen Hale, can certainly expose a secondary that was bad against Miami. They were not good downfield. They couldn't tackle in space either. They were not good one bit. So I think that game's still fresh on their minds. And I'm going to pick Alabama to cover and win this game by 2 touchdowns. I think Max Johnson's a very solid football player, a good quarterback. Did have some bad turnovers last week, though. They want to get guys like Evan Stewart and Anais Smith involved, and I think they certainly will. But I think Alabama, they're just going to force A&M to be too one-dimensional. The O-line's capable of so much for the Aggies. I just think here they're not going to be able to produce much after 2 straight 200-plus rushing yard games. I think that's going to end here. The Bama defensive front has been playing much better than I expected. The backers have been terrific. I think the Alabama defense is going to make a statement here, and I think this will be a close game for the most part. Tied, pulling away late for a 14-point victory.
This is going to be a very interesting game, a huge test for Alabama on the road. Obviously, they lost to Texas at home, but they've gotten a little bit. They struggled against USF, but they've rounded a little bit into form. They beat Ole Miss at home 24-10, holding Lane Kiffin to 10 points, and they went on and absolutely stomped on the Bulldogs on the road of Mississippi State this past week. Milroe's getting more comfortable, getting a little bit better. He's still not that quarterback that we were hoping he was going to be. He's really not quite lived up to the expectations and has struggled at times, but he's getting better. Got to cut down the interceptions. The 3 picks he had are all very bad. Looked better against Mississippi State. 195 yards through the air is not a good enough number for Alabama. The yards on the ground, 167, though, is a good number. Jace McClellan's been really good so far. Roydell Williams is a nice balance. A&M's front seven is certainly fantastic. They're great against the run, 96 yards allowed on the ground. And A&M, for their part, has looked really good other than the one blemish, the loss on the road at Miami, where they really did get outplayed in that game. I'm not going to make a pick as an Alabama alum, but I think this is a very important game for Alabama. They have a big opportunity to come on the road and win at Kyle Field, where they lost last time and struggled in that game and really lost on the road. Max Johnson has a big opportunity here at quarterback to get a historic win and hang himself in Aggie history if he can knock off Alabama.
Now looking at a game that will be on ESPN, Syracuse-North Carolina. Very interesting contest here. It's been the Amari Hampton show, really, for North Carolina's offense. 383 and 7 touchdowns rushing. He's really been bailing them out. Drake May, really not playing all that great. 4 picks compared to 5 touchdowns. He's really fell out of the Heisman race in the first month of the season. Still completing 73%. J.J. Jones, I figured he'd be the biggest breakout player in the conference. He's their leading pass catcher. Nate McCollum's gotten more involved. Kobe Paysour, Kamari Morales. They have plenty of weapons at pass catcher. Biggest problem, though, for me is that this North Carolina defense, they're just not great. Kamari and Rucker, he's been phenomenal, flat-out elite for them, 7.5 TFL. Cedric Gray, Power Eccles. I mean, they got some ballers on this defense. They just don't play up to the level they should. You've seen that against Appalachian State after a great effort against South Carolina. They turn around and give up almost 500 yards, 34 points, ended up having the win in overtime. Yes, they've bounced back against Minnesota and Pitt, 2 offenses that really are just not good at all, though. So I think this is going to be an opportunity for Garrett Schrader, LeQuint Allen to get back to grounding and pounding. And Syracuse, they love to get in those short down and distances and hit you with some play action with some bigger bodies at pass catcher. I think that's what you're going to see here. Syracuse will cover. I think North Carolina is going to win this game ultimately, though. It's going to be a close one. I think it's going to be a nail biter. Syracuse, they always seem to play better when you don't expect it. I wasn't shocked last week to see Clemson cover. That was what my pick was. They got players that can ball out. Guys like Marlo Wax, Justin Barron in the secondary. I still think that's a bit of a strength for Syracuse, even though Clay Klubnik kind of put him on a clinic last week. I think Syracuse is going to play much better in this game, Nick. And again, I think the balanced offense here is really going to test this UNC defense. Should be a good one here on ESPN.
This is a very interesting matchup. Syracuse disappointed me a little bit at home with their loss to Clemson. Ended up being a pretty lopsided loss. I thought they might have a chance to be competitive in that game. They didn't quite have that opportunity, but I think Syracuse is still a very good team in the ACC, a very underrated team. They haven't played a whole lot of teams. They did win on the road at Purdue. They're 4-1 so far this season. I think that is a respectable mark for this team so far. Garrett Schrader's been a good quarterback so far. Yeah, he has a few mistakes, 4 interceptions, but he has over 1,100 yards and 8 touchdowns so far. Allen, as well, has been carrying the load for this team, 363 yards on the ground, 6 touchdowns. Drake May has not lived up to the hype. I picked him to be the Heisman. I'm very disappointed so far with him. He still has opportunity to turn it around, but this has been a poor season for him. The complete percentage is good, about 1,200 yards passing, 5 touchdowns, 4 interceptions, though. Amari Hampton, like you said, 73 carries, 383 on the ground, 7 scores for him. J.J. Jones been involved as well, 16 receptions for nearly 300 yards, but no touchdowns so far. The Syracuse defense is good against the run, though. Can they isolate Hampton and put them in tough situations where they can't gain the ground? They give up less than 100 yards per game on the ground. They give up 200 yards through the air. It's a good Syracuse defense that is a physical unit, which is why I think they will cover. I'm going to take UNC like 28-24, something like that, to win at home, and UNC to move to 5-0 as they get to the tougher part of the schedule.
Looking at the nightcap, Kentucky and Georgia, ranked matchup in the SEC East. Winner of this game will likely end up winning the division. Big line. Over 2 scores in favor of the Bulldogs as they come back to Athens. They've not covered, I don't think, in a single game this season as Georgia. Perfect timing, you would think, for Kentucky here. They just got done dominating Florida in the trenches. They didn't rush for more than 160 yards in the first 4 games. 329, over 9 yards a carry. Ray Davis exploded, 4 touchdowns, almost 300 total yards for him. While on the other hand, Auburn, put up 200-plus rushing on Georgia. That was the first time since 2018 someone's did that. That's something Georgia just doesn't do. The physicality from Kentucky, it seems to be a little bit back. Liam Cohen coming over, he has, coming back to Lexington, has plenty of experience with this offensive line. It seemed like he just needed to put some of the right guys in the right place, and they were great against Florida. That's a pretty good run defense. That's not no slouch that they were able to do that right there. So this is interesting, Nick. Who do you think's going to have the edge in the trenches here? Because I don't expect Georgia to be this week, again. I definitely think Kentucky will have some success, but this is an opportunity where Georgia could just flat out win this game by 40 points, though.
This is a very interesting game. I think this is one of the most exciting games of the day. I think if there's going to be a chance that Kentucky is going to get a huge historic upset, if Mark Stoops can get that big banner upset, this is going to be the one to get it on the road at Sanford Stadium. The line, like you said, is over 2 scores, 14.5. But Georgia, for their part, have not looked good. Kentucky's looked good in the trenches. They've looked good running the ball. 171 yards per game on the ground for Kentucky, 225 through the air. This Kentucky defense is very sneaky good. 75 yards per game allowed on the ground. They've just been able to smother offenses on the ground and really not given anything. Also, Georgia gave up a ton of yards on the ground to Auburn, and what was a close game on the road, 27-20 was the ultimate win for Georgia. They've been sluggish throughout this season. Carson Beck has not looked fantastic at all, in my opinion. 1,500 yards passing, 7 touchdowns, 2 interceptions. Beck looks a little uncomfortable. Playing at home will certainly help with that. Brock Bowers has really been dominating and bailing this team out, for lack of a better term. Devin Leary, though, cannot make mistakes. If you make mistakes on the road at Sanford Stadium, they're going to eat you alive. That crowd is going to go crazy. He has 5 picks. He cannot turn the ball over against this Georgia defense if Kentucky wants to be competitive. I think they're physical enough to compete with Georgia. I think they have an opportunity in the trenches to win a battle or two. I know Georgia is the top dog in the nation in terms of physicality, but Kentucky can compete. They're a good team on the ground on defense. They're a good team running the ball. I like Kentucky to cover the spread. It's going to be a close game. I think UGA is going to win very late in the game, just like they did against Auburn. Another scare for the Bulldogs. They look very vulnerable this year.
Yeah, I thought Carson Beck was very good in that fourth quarter. He was able to seal the deal. Of course, you got Brock Bowers running routes. Kentucky doesn't have that misdirection factor, though, unless they want to put some receivers in the backfield, because Devin Leary's not mobile at all. He's got to be better throwing the football, though. Like you said, 5 picks, only completing 57%, 9 completions on 20 attempts against Florida. Had a lot of bad balls, 3.5 yards per attempt. Plenty of inaccuracies as well. I mean, this guy's just got to play better. He's certainly capable of it. Seems like his confidence needs to be regained. Dane Key, Berrien Brown, Tavian Robinson, they have a nice, versatile receiving core here. Brown's got to be big with his speed. Back to, the run defense for Kentucky. Yeah, they've been great. The Florida game, that's pretty impressive. I still think that's a good run game from Florida. Of course, they haven't really played anybody before that, though. This was a good prove-it game for them against Florida, and they certainly went out there and did it. Like you said, this defense is no slouch. Trevin Wallace, Deon Walker is massive in the middle. Keyshawn Silver, Khalil Saunders, and then J.J. Weaver, of course, off the edge. They have ball players that can compete in this conference, and they proved it last year when they played this team. I'm going to take Kentucky to cover as well. I think that Devin Leary's going to play better. I think they'll have some success running to the edge. But again, I would not be shocked one bit if this is a 45-3 victory from Georgia, because usually when they don't look great a week before, they usually come out the next and absolutely blast their opponent, Nick. So I'm definitely scared for Kentucky for that. And I think Mark Stoops is well aware of that as well.
It certainly is possible that Georgia comes out and wins this game at home by a large margin. I'm certainly going to be willing to admit that at this point. I just think that Kentucky's defense will keep them in this game. It's going to be a low-scoring affair. Georgia's going to win it, but this is, like I said, this is the one chance. Mark Stoops has been building a program. People have been critical of Kentucky and Mark Stoops. They said that thing is overrated, not worth the money they pay him. I don't know his contract entirely, but I know it's a significant salary he gets. Kentucky has been building slowly and steadily over the last couple of years, and Stoops has an opportunity here to gut punch the back-to-back defending national champions on the road and make a name for themselves. They're the second best team in the East, in my opinion. Mizzou not that far behind them, but Georgia's looked vulnerable. This is an opportunity. If someone's gonna get them, it's got to be Kentucky or Missouri. I think Kentucky's got the better shot here.
Looking at ABC, Louisville, Notre Dame in a ranked matchup. The Irish, they have USC in 2 weeks. That'll be 4 straight ranked matchups for Notre Dame here. They got to get past the Cardinal first, though, going on the road. Louisville, their defense, I don't think it's really all that great. I think they're kind of thin on the interior. They looked very good against NC State, though, better than I thought they would. The offense for the Wolfpack, though, has really been sputtering. Week 1 against Georgia Tech, it wasn't all that great. Gave up some plays against Indiana as well. But for the most part, this is a defense I think has been stepping up. The quality of opponent hasn't been that great. Ashton Gelati, though, he's phenomenal. I think Desmond Tell can give them some things there. Transfers in the back end, Cameron Kelly and Devin Neal, they've certainly been impressive for them, starting to come into their own, I think. TJ Quinn at linebacker has really stepped up. I also love Travis Brownlee at corner as well. But I just don't know if this run defense is built to slow down what Notre Dame's going to bring to you. Physicality, led by Audric Estime. They got plenty of healthy bodies. Jeremiah Love, Brian Payne, and Jadarian Price. They got plenty of different guys they're going to roll out at running back. And I think that's probably going to be the difference maker in this game. And I think the linebackers have just been terrific for Notre Dame this year. JT Bertrand, Jack Kaiser, Maris Liafau, and the defensive line has plenty of playmakers, led by Howard Cross and Riley Mills. And some of these guys in the secondary, not just Benjamin Morrison. I think Xavier Watts, for example, the guy that's really stepped up, transferred Javonte Jean-Baptiste. I mean, this is a really good defense, Nick. Certainly started to give up some yards there in that second half against Duke, who's certainly a streaky team. But for the most part, they only gave up 323, really stifled them in the first half. The Buckeye run game, for the most part, 2 weeks ago wasn't all that great, other than that one big play. It's going to be a fun game here. I definitely think that they have the speed, the Cardinal at wide receiver, to try and expose this team that wants to play, press man coverage. Jamari Thrash, Chris Bell, Kevin Coleman, Jimmy Callaway. They have plenty of weapons here for this receiving core. I really just don't know how this game is going to go because it's a different matchup than what they've had the last 2 weeks. But I think we have enough on Notre Dame to make a fair prediction here. I'm going to pick them to cover on the road. I really think Louisville might have something, though, led by Jeff Brom. I just think the secondary, these linebackers, the D-line, I'm just going to take this defense to pretty much win this game for him. Hartman's not going to make any mistakes. He hasn't yet. In the past, he has. But I'm going to take a balanced approach and a nice defense. Basically the same thing we've seen all year from Notre Dame. I'll go ahead and take a stab at him again, but the Trojans are looming. Maybe they look ahead.
I am going to buck the trend here. I'm going to pick Louisville. I think, this is going to be a game that's very interesting. This is a big opportunity for the Cardinals, who can move to 6-0, winning at home. It's going to be Rutgers at Cardinals Stadium. This is a big opportunity for one of the biggest games probably since the Lamar Jackson days for this team, a really loud and proud crowd. I think Hartman's going to make that mistake. I said he'd make the mistake against Duke, and he didn't. He was mistake-free, but Duke could have won that game. They were definitely hanging in there late. That defense let them down on that final drive. I think he makes the mistake this week, almost 1,500 yards passing, 14 touchdowns for Hartman. I think he makes a mistake here against Louisville, and they're going to find a way. That secondary is sneaky good for the Cardinal. There's a very solid team. For their part, I think Notre Dame is a fantastic defense. I love their defense so far this season. 271 given up so far per game. 146 yards allowed through the air. 124 on the ground. Plummer, those looked good. The 6 interceptions is certainly a problem, but 1,400 yards passing, 11 touchdowns. Hartman's been better, but Plummer's been pretty solid as well. Estamine and Jordan, 2 good running backs going against each other. Nice balanced matchup there. Estamine, obviously, he had the touchdown against Duke. He's got 672 yards on the ground and 7 scores. Jordan, for his part, 5'10 and 6 touchdowns. They're going to try to attack Evans, the tight end, Hartman. They're going to throw to him a lot. I think that they're going to try and isolate that and make that matchup a tough matchup for Notre Dame. It's going to be a loud crowd, like I said, good weather in Louisville, Kentucky. I like the Cardinals to win this game. This is a statement win for them. Notre Dame, I think they're looking forward to USC. I think they got a little shell shock there and struggled against Duke, after losing to Ohio State. They're kind of in a weird spot for me. I like Louisville to pounce on them and get this opportunity to get a big win.
Yeah, I was going to mention that. You talk about Hartman not making a mistake, and you said he would, but Jack Plummer's not really been that great. An interception in 4 out of the 5 games this year, put on a clinic against Boston College. Other than that, though, he just really has not been executing the scheme the way he should be, considering how much experience he has in this Jeff Brom system. So that's kind of another reason I think I'm going to take Notre Dame. I would have no problem with Louisville winning this game. I'm very excited for this football team. I'd love them to be there at the end of the year. Got some big-time matchups on deck for them if they can continue to stay undefeated. I just think the Irish will be up for this one. Backs are against the wall. One more loss, and they're out of the playoff picture. So I'll take the Irish. It's going to be a very fun game to watch, though. Notre Dame, though, just a tough run right here for their schedule. Looking at Arkansas as an Ole Miss. Arkansas looking for a bounce back after just a poor game against A&M. The Ole Miss defense obviously is not all that great. The offense was able to outscore LSU last week, that is. It's just an interesting game to predict. I'm going to go ahead and take an Arkansas cover. I just think the run game, the balance. Guys like KJ Jefferson, Raheem Sanders, these are guys I like in games like this. Not playing great defenses, going on the road. They're veterans. Sam Pittman's certainly not just going to lay down or roll over after a disappointing last couple of weeks. I'm going to take them to cover the 11.5-point line. I think Ole Miss will win this game. I talked about how this offense for the Rebels is pretty inconsistent. Last week, they were able to find consistency, though. 389 passing from Dart, 300-plus rushing, led by Quinshad Judkins, who finally got the wheels churning there. Another high-scoring game here. I'll take Ole Miss to win. A cover by Arkansas, though, just because I love the veterans. I love KJ Sanders. They should be able to get going here against this poor defense from Ole Miss. What are your thoughts on this contest in the SEC West?
Had Ole Miss lost to LSU this past week, I would have said these were 2 SEC West programs in total free fall. Ole Miss balances the ship a little, steadies the ship after their loss to Alabama, where their offense couldn't do anything, and they just blitz a bad LSU defense. 55-point win at home, a huge win for Lane Kiffin and company, upsetting LSU, who certainly find themselves in a tough spot here. The SEC West, a total toss-up. These teams are all just gut-punching each other week in, week out. Arkansas comes in here with an opportunity to do the same. I don't think it's going to happen. I like Mississippi to cover the points. I like them to win this game. I'm thinking a pretty hefty score line here. I think that Ole Miss has got this finally finding their pace on offense and hitting that full stride. 517 total yards offense so far this season. The defense, it's poor. 400 yards allowed per game, 145 on the ground. But Arkansas, for their part, they've allowed 339 and 112 on the ground. KJ Jefferson has not lit the world up yet for me. I need to see more. They haven't really got anything out of Rocket Sanders so far this season. Quinshad Judkins is finally breaking into his form. Dart, for his part, is playing great outside the Alabama game. He's fantastic so far. 1,500 yards passing, 11 touchdowns. 2 interceptions plus what he can do on the ground. I like Ole Miss to win this game and just continue to bring that momentum. They needed to bounce back after Alabama. They got against LSU. Can they keep this moving, move to 5-1, and keep up in this SEC West race?
Final game we'll discuss, Fresno State-Wyoming. Going on the road to Laramie is the Bulldogs. A lot of people consider this team the favorite to be the Group of 5 representative in the New Year's Six. Man, I think as the schedule is weak, they have a tough test here. The run defense for Fresno has been pretty solid this year. They've not allowed more than 135 yards rushing. The schedule certainly hasn't been the greatest. But this is what Wyoming does. They don't really throw the ball. Andrew Peasley has some nice speed at quarterback. Harrison Whaley, though, a former NIU player, 457 on the round, putting up 152 per contest. 3 straight 100-yard games. That includes one against Texas, a very good run defense from the Longhorns. He was able to do that to him. So Fresno State, I think they're starting to have some struggles here against the run, even though they certainly have a nice defense with some versatility. Mikey Keeney, though, coming over from UCF, he's been phenomenal for Jeff Tedford, completing 69%, 14 touchdowns, almost 1,500 yards. Jalen Gill at receiver, really enjoying his third destination. Him and Eric Brooks have been a very nice duo, and Jalen Moss is a freshman as well. And I think they have pretty adequate balance as well. Elijah Gillum at running back gives them just enough to get things done. I'm going to take Wyoming to cover this one. They beat Texas Tech, hung in there with Texas. Craig Bolt is a phenomenal head coach, coming off back-to-back wins, including one over App State and New Mexico. 4-1 record, the only loss being 21 to Texas. Nick, that's a pretty good blemish there, where their defense really was not bad one bit in that contest against Texas. Didn't give up many explosive plays one bit. So I'm going to take Wyoming to win this game outright. I think this will be interesting. Cole Godbout, a nose tackle. Veterans like him, Devontae Harris, Gavin Meyer. I think they're going to step up on the D-line. Easton Gibbs, a phenomenal linebacker. They're going to make, Fresno State have a headache on offense, I think. And I'm going to pick them to win this game outright. It's going to be a close one. It's going to be a 3 to 7 point final score difference. It's going to be a great game, though, Nick. I'll take Wyoming to win this one outright, though.
I'm going to take Fresno State to win this game. I'm going to go a bit different from you there, although I think Wyoming has all the opportunity. They've played very well this season. They beat Texas Tech, obviously. They hung in there with Texas. They gave Texas hell for most of that game, so certainly a good Wyoming team playing in front of a ruckus crowd at home. Fresno State, though, I think they're going to ride this momentum, like you said. A lot of people picked them to be the Group of 5 representative at the New Year's Six, and they're going to get that momentum. If they beat Wyoming here, the schedule is very easy. This is the one big potential hurdle here for this team, a ranked team. I like them to cover the spread. Right now I'm looking at about 6 points. I think this is a good team that has nice balance here. They've looked good so far. They beat the hell out of Kent State. They beat Nevada pretty well. They beat Arizona State 29-0 on the road. They struggled against Eastern Washington, but overall they beat Purdue as well on the road. So they got 2 big road wins so far this season at Purdue and Arizona State against Power 5 teams. So now they come into Wyoming and have a chance to get a big win here, move to 6-0, and be real contenders for a New Year's Six bowl. I like this Fresno State team a lot, and they have a good opportunity here to win this game.
Yeah, this is a good Mountain West game as well for people who care. We certainly care about it. We're going to be tuned into all these contests. As always, Nick, I appreciate you joining me. Very good Week 6 slate here. We're going to learn a lot about a lot of these teams as we really kick in the high gear mid part of the season.
This is a huge matchup for the Mountain West that we just covered here, but a lot of big games overall. Big games SEC West, big games in the Big 12 as well, Pac-12 as well. A lot of big games this year. This is a huge opportunity for teams to prove themselves that they're contenders as we start to get to the real, nit and gritty of this season.
Make sure you guys like, comment, subscribe. See you next time.